Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Brother Dr. Jeffrey Sterling, the Surgeon General for the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And on behalf of our General President, Brother Dr. Willis Lances III, our Board of Directors, and our esteemed members across the country, I am so pleased to be with you here for this special webinar that's going to be discussing what we would want to know for Blood Cancer Awareness Month. Alpha Phi Alpha is very pleased to collaborate with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society to educate communities across the country about the racial disparities surrounding blood cancers and other cancer topics that disproportionately impact clinical trials access, effective communication between patients and healthcare providers, the provision of nutrition during and after a cancer diagnosis, and caring for your caregivers. We're going to be discussing that and resources that are available to you, your family, and those with whom you're connected, free of charge for those of you in need. Unfortunately, don't stop me if you've heard this before, but this topic is something that is all too common for us in that it does disproportionately affect African Americans and African American men. When was the last time you thought to have a conversation about blood cancer? Well, you probably should do more of that because cancer still is the #1 cause of death in the United States. And as these things go, pretty much anything that is a top 10 cause of death in the United States disproportionately impacts African American communities. Our esteemed panel is going to be discussing just how extensive that impact occurs in our communities, why this is important, and what it is we can do. But we want to heighten your information, knowledge, and ability to address these rare blood cancers because they do impact us, and you should know about this. Allow me to welcome our panelists. We have quite an introduction of individuals here. I'm going to start with Brother Dr. Jerome Butler, who grew up in Annapolis, Maryland, and is a graduate of Wake Forest University School of Medicine. He completed his residency in radiation oncology at Wake Forest. He now lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, and is a senior partner and owner of the Southeast Radiation Oncology Group. Brother Dr. Butler has a particular interest in healthcare disparities, as we all should, ensuring that African American patients receive proper care for their diagnoses. Notably, he was named by Castle Connolly as a 2024 top doctor in radiation oncology. Brother Dr. Butler has been a member of Alpha Phi Alpha for 28 years. Welcome, Dr. Butler. We also have with us Brother Rodney Jones, who is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha's Phi Lambda chapter in Raleigh, North Carolina. He is a nonprofit professional and community outreach leader who works with LLS, Lymphoma and Leukemia Society. And we're just very pleased that the organization has chosen us to get this message out. Thank you for your leadership and your service. And please pay attention. You're going to hear some excellent information come from LLS today. And speaking of information, we're going to put a face and a heart to this conversation as we go along. I want to introduce you all to Mr. Rashad Hayes, who is a blood cancer survivor. And his story reflects so much of what it is we think, or should I say, don't think about the diagnosis, so much of how we are impacted at the point in time of a diagnosis, how we can mobilize resources to give ourselves the best opportunity for positive outcomes when these diagnoses are foisted upon us. Remember, prevention is not just avoidance, it's early detection, it's screening, and it's getting the appropriate treatment. So all of those things are part of what we want to impress upon you today, and I can't thank you enough for joining us. So let's set the stage, and we're going to have Brother Jones talk to us about the importance of cancer awareness in the Black community. Welcome and good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Sterling. Thank you so much for offering me this platform, and I appreciate this opportunity, especially since this is Blood Cancer Awareness Month. I can't tell you how valuable of an opportunity this is for me. It is really critical for us to address the disparities in cancer diagnosis and treatment, especially the way they affect the Black community. The unfortunate reality is Black Americans are more likely to be diagnosed at later stages than other ethnic groups, and they tend to get treatment options when they're very limited. But awareness and education on platforms such as this can change this. Communities like the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, who offer free resources, who offer education, and who offer awareness, are key and critical to reaching people who may not have access to the healthcare system or who may have mistrust due to historical reasons. We've seen that early detection can change lives and can save lives. The earlier you catch cancer, the better your chances. I have a few statistics I want to share that I think might paint a better picture. Black Americans are twice as likely to be affected by myeloma than other ethnic groups. And every 3 minutes, someone is diagnosed with myeloma. There are 1.4 million individuals in the United States who are either living with or are in remission of a blood cancer. This information comes from LLS scientists, researchers, and the American Cancer Society. So it's really important to advocate for your health. And I just want to encourage everyone who is listening to take action to help us spread the word. I am so proud of the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated for, I believe, taking this historic step and being one of the first of any Divine Nine to join forces with LLS to go into the deepest portions of the African American community to raise this awareness. And it's important to get connected with an organization like LLS to get access to free education, finances, emotional support, and information. And together we can make a difference.
So before I transition, I mean, you said a lot there, and it's important that the audience has a clue about what it is we're saying. Hard stop. Cancer is still the #1 cause of death in the United States, right?
Absolutely.
African Americans are way disproportionately affected and overrepresented when it comes to cancer. These blood cancers that we're talking about are prevalent in our community, but we don't have conversations about them. And that is why we get diagnosed later in the disease's evolution and why we have worse healthcare outcomes. Did we miss anything there?
No, you did. You're spot on. You're spot on.
Yeah,
We're just not
so
paying attention.
So to the audience, you have to pay attention. When you have your routine conversations with your healthcare providers, say, hey, my mother, my grandmother was always worried about the big C. That's what it was called back in the day. Can I get screened? What do I need to know about it? So let's plant a flag right there, because I think that what Dr. Butler is going to get at is what type of symptoms you should be concerned about. You sit at home minding your business. You aren't going to walk around every day looking under the covers for cancer, but there are some things about which you should be aware. So, Brother Dr. Butler, let's talk about both how you can be on the lookout for these types of things and how you can know when to and how to engage your primary care physician, because that's the portal of entry unless you show up in one of my emergency departments, and then what to expect if you do get diagnosed and you're going to get treated. So welcome and good morning. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And I want to thank LLS and, of course, my great fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, for actually putting on this program and asking me to be part of it. So again, thank you, Brother Jones. Thank you, Brother Dr. Sterling, for that insightful introduction. One of the biggest challenges that we face is that many cancer symptoms either go overlooked, as we heard, or mistaken for other health conditions, especially in the case of blood cancers, where the symptoms are very nondescript, like fatigue, unexplained weight loss, and swollen lymph nodes. They can be easily ignored. As you already heard, and you're going to hear more and more in this conversation today, early diagnosis is key, because there are effective treatments available, and we're going to talk about that more later. But again, we need to be able to get to our doctor. There are so many myths out there, particularly in the Black community, about cancer treatment. And so today we hope to dispel some of those myths, especially in blood cancers. And we believe that once you are in the midst of something that's bothering you, you need to show up to your medical physician. As an African-American radiation oncologist or oncologist, I really want to emphasize that treatment options have evolved dramatically over the last several years. We're seeing much better outcomes, especially with early diagnoses. And it's vital to stay proactive about your health and keep an open dialogue with your healthcare provider. So one of the questions asked to me again was, what kind of symptoms could I have if we have a blood cancer or a multiple myeloma? And again, early on, there may not be really symptoms, or may not really be anything that is out of the ordinary. But as Dr. Sterling stated, if being proactive, talking to your physician about this big C, this cancer word in your family, is important. Also, it's important to know if you've had a history of multiple myeloma in your family. We're much more likely as African Americans and actually than our white counterparts to actually have it if our relative ancestor, family member had multiple myeloma. So it's very important that we know what kind of cancers that we have. But going back to the symptomatology or the symptoms that we see, I mentioned a few, but I'm going to mention them again. Bone pain, nausea, constipation, loss of appetite, tiredness, weight loss, weakness. Those are a few to start at. So those are what we call constitutional symptoms. So those symptoms of the body that just something is not right.
Dr. Sterling, it looks like Dr. Butler froze there.
Yes, he did. I was wondering if it was me or if it was him. So what I want to actually do is I just want people to appreciate how you leave disease very often correlates with how you entered into the diagnosis. So the things that we're talking about here are things about which you should be aware. So for example, it's kind of hard in a country that has 70% of us either being obese or overweight to have weight loss that is unintended. So if you're losing weight, you might want to talk to your doctor about why you're losing weight. If you're in a situation to where you are fatigued, well, again, that happens with aging, that happens with a lot of different considerations. But if it's happening to you, it's a good time to have a conversation with your physician because there are baseline screening tests that we'll do, whether it's at your primary care physician's office or in the emergency department, that can actually identify and quantify the disease with which you're suffering. So maintain a baseline level of good health, and that will steed you well. And if you are proactive in wanting to know about your health status, that's going to allow this type of thing to be discovered at the earliest possible opportunity and make your treatment that much better when you have to have it engaged. I see we have the good doctor back.
I apologize with the weather today, but everything you said is exactly correct. We definitely want you to get to your primary care physician. We want people to be proactive more than anything more so than learning about multiple myeloma today. Again, as you hear from Dr. Sterling as a preventive health career physician, it's getting to your physician early about any concerns that you have with your body.
So you want to follow up on some of the treatment considerations that you were getting at?
Yeah, so definitely. So, the earlier the diagnosis, the better. And there is a host of treatment options if we can diagnose multiple myeloma early. Sometimes actually with blood cancers, and I think we should start with what is multiple myeloma. Multiple myeloma is a form of cancer of a white blood cell that we call a plasma cell. And so it's in the blood. And so this cell actually is abnormal and it's actually transformed and it's not doing its job. And so a lot of times it's actually maybe it's not too much of a treatment program that you're put on, but it's watching. And then you may move forward to different type of what we call systemic therapies. And that's oftentimes felt to be chemotherapy or now in 2024, targeted therapy. So therapies that are targeting a certain problem in our body. And then as it moves forward, of course, it can include radiation therapy and other type of modalities. But there are a host of treatment options, and sometimes it's just actually watching our patient very carefully and making sure they're supported with what they have before we have to start treatment.
Yeah, but you just touched on something that's very important. See, I wear a couple of, actually I wear many different hats, but in this conversation, I'll talk about the fact that I'm big on health prevention and promotion, but I'm also an emergency physician. And some of the saddest cases I've ever had in my career are the individuals that proudly, at the beginning, come into the emergency department and say, I haven't seen a doctor in 20 years. That never ends well, folks. And part of the reason for that is because whatever has been cooking inside of you, is allowed to fester and to become its most virulent form. I bring that up in the context that we get a lot of individuals that want to say things like, I'm worried about the way that this is treated. I heard that, I might get experimented on, or I'm afraid, so I don't want to get the diagnosis. In emergency medicine, we actually have a saying, never let a potential side effect get in the way of what is a defined life threat. And when you have cancer, as we've said several times now, it is the #1 cause of death in the United States. It is not here for play. It is here to get you. So the earlier you get diagnosed and get treatment started, the better off you're going to be. So please, please, please listen to what Dr. Butler is saying. health prevention and promotion is the way to go when it comes to this, because so many of these diseases, these cancers, actually have infinitely better outcomes. There's a duality in statistics that the Black community should be aware of. First of all, we die so much more because we get diagnosed late, but
Absolutely.
when we get diagnosed early in the process, our healthcare outcomes actually equal or exceed that of the general population. So don't be that guy that is worried about myths and misconceptions about the treatment that occurs when you get diagnosed with cancer. You want to jump back on that, Dr. Butler?
I'm gonna repeat that, because I think that's actually worth hearing. And Dr. Sterling said it so well. And this is something that it's really hard to believe in a lot of our community, that what he just said was something important. That actually the reason that we often do poorer is because we're diagnosed later. But if we're diagnosed earlier, we can actually do equal to our counterparts or better. And I've been saying that over and over again to individuals, and it's a hard thing to believe that we can actually do better. Well, why is that? Well, again, we are all made different genetically. We actually, again, we have oftentimes more aggressive treatment. Cancers diagnosed in our African-American population, but we respond very well to treatment. We have to be given the chance to be treated.
The chance to be treated.
And, one more point that I'll make before we transition is that how you leave these situations is largely determined by how you come into this. So please take better care of yourselves. Be mindful of your baseline health. I've said it for years. I say it early and often. Disease is an expression of risk, okay? And if you are the type of person that has hypertension, diabetes, or obese, smokes, overindulgence in alcohols, no matter what the disease is, it likely was precipitated by your bad habits, and the disease process will be worsened because of your bad habits. So let's take this as a plug for you just to care more about yourself on the front end. Don't be oblivious to the fact that we live lifestyles in this land of the free that actually lead towards certain types of diseases. Multiple myeloma and other blood cancers very much fit the bill for that. Be mindful. I want to kind of crystallize so much of what we've been talking about through the story of a blood cancer survivor. Mr. Hayes, Rashad Hayes, is going to tell us a story that I really want you to take heart to and listen to, because it represents so much of the path that we go through, and the path that many of us would do well to go through, because it involves knowledge, utilization of resources, and the best possible outcome on the back end. So, Mr. Hayes, Rashad, I want to welcome you to the conversation, and thank you so much for being willing to share the story. And I turn the floor over to you.
Well, first, I want to say thank you all for having me. This topic, it gets kind of sensitive to me at times, because as the doctor was saying, a lot of my symptoms were overlooked. I was having the night sweats, I was fatigued, I was losing weight, but I just thought that was just stress. I thought that was stress of being a college student. I thought I was eating too many ramen noodles. I thought it was so much more than what it could be, which was cancer. And before I really get into this story, I think it's important to note that health is a very complex topic. When you think about the social determinants of health, the one thing I always tell people is that your social community exposure is really what's going to guide you on your health journey. And I can be the first to admit, growing up, I grew up in a poverty-stricken area, raised by my mom. I didn't see my mom go to the doctor. When it was time for home remedies, it was drink some castor oil or a spoonful of castor oil and go lay down when you were sick. So I was naturally taught, don't worry about the doctor. We couldn't afford it. And so as I proceeded to grow, I became a scholarship athlete playing football. So I was in the best shape of my life. I was at Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina, and I made the decision that I wanted to transfer to a bigger school. And so I went to UAB. As I get to UAB, this is around 2013. As soon as I got on campus, I started to hear rumors that the football team would get cut. And so as I'm hearing rumors that the football team was getting cut, I realized I couldn't play ball anymore. And so I started working 2 jobs now, because now I'm trying to pay my way through school. And so now I'm dealing with that stress. And so a lot of my symptoms that I was dealing with, I thought it was stress from those things. I'm working from 3 to 11, and I'm in class from 8 to 2. So as I'm working so much, as I'm trying to do what I need to do to survive, I started to neglect my health. And it wasn't until my senior year of undergrad that I finally woke up one morning from a night sweat, and I went to use the restroom and noticed that I couldn't use the bathroom. And so then I pick up the phone and I do like what most men do. I hate to say this, but I call my mama and I'm like, hey, mama, you know, something is wrong. And the first thing she tells me is, hey, you need to go to the emergency room. And even then, I'm still kind of cocky because I'm like, I'm in this best shape of my life. Surely it's not going to be cancer. Surely it's not going to be anything. I'm going to get into this place and I'm going to go back home. And so I go into this room. I'm laying on the bed. My feet are up. I'm watching ESPN, checking the highlights. And before you know it, instead of one doctor, I get two. And so when the second man come in, you know, he touches my leg and he says, hey, we need to run some additional tests and we need to do a PET scan. And so I proceeded to do this PET scan. And at that time, I didn't know what that was. And as I'm laying on this table, it's bringing me through, you know, I'm having this machine telling me to breathe in, hold your breath, breathe out. And it was at that moment I realized that was the first time I recognized the air in my lungs. It took something bad happening to me in order for me to take control of my health. And so I finished the PET scan and he rolls me back into the room. He then comes back and say, hey, we gotta admit you. Well, your PET scan lit up like a Christmas tree. Again, the first thing I thought was, I didn't know Christmas lights. What are you talking about? This was new to me. I was by myself. I was 22 years old. I didn't ask any questions. I just said, okay. So they take me upstairs and I'm in the hospital for a week. I then began to look on the board and I started to see words like oncology. Again, this is foreign. So I started looking up on my phone and realized it was the study of cancer. And so then I started wondering, man, is this really what's happening? Me dealing with this C word, this cancer. So then I began to be going, like, find myself in denial. Like, I didn't want to believe that this was happening to me because I was an athlete, the best shape of my life. And now you're telling me I'm getting ready to fight for mine? And I think the hardest thing that I had to deal with was knowing that this blood cancer was something I couldn't see. It was literally something inside of me. Although I felt tired, although I felt like, oh man, I'm just not hungry and I lost my appetite, although I was losing weight, I never thought it was going to be cancer. And then I felt even worse because I didn't have a baseline. The moment I got out of the house with my parents, I stopped going to the doctor because I couldn't afford the copays. So I stopped going. So I didn't have a baseline. And the one thing I always think about is after I was, you know, hooked up to chemotherapies and going through it is, I'm glad I caught it, but what could have been done if I would have noticed this earlier? So now I make it my mission to really speak on it. You know, as I travel around the world speaking about overcoming adversity, I tell people we all are fighting something we can't see. What better way to be able to at least know where you are? And so as I continue to grow, right, I then learned that follicular lymphoma was what I was diagnosed with. That there's no cure for it. So at 22, you tell a young man, hey, not only are you going to deal with cancer, you're going to live with it for the rest of your life. Immediately, I didn't ask any questions like, hey, let's do what we got to do for chemotherapy. I remember they gave me a piece of paper. I didn't say anything. I just read it. I said, okay, cool, let's get it. And before you know it, what I didn't realize now that I wish I would have known then was that this would now limit my chances of being able to have children. So now as a 30-year-old man, because of what I went through with chemotherapy and because of my lack of speaking up, my lack of my ability of saying, hey, let me speak up. Let me ask these right questions. I felt myself because now here it is wondering, like, yes, I'm a man of faith, but I can admit back then I was so scared of what I was going to deal with. I just did everything and I didn't advocate for myself. Whatever you told me to do, I was going to do it because I was scared. Because I was so used to crying and nobody hearing my tears or helping me that I thought I didn't have any help. But brothers, moms, daughters, whoever's listening to this right now, there's organizations out there that genuinely want to help you. You just got to be willing to speak up. You just got to be willing to speak up. Because we don't know we can't save you from drowning if we don't know you're drowning. And a lot of us are drowning within our own thoughts, our own minds. And so as I'm here today, I really want y'all to understand, whether you're young or old, it can happen to you. I was 22 in the best shape of my life. And this is why I don't take this lightly. Not to mention being a cancer patient, sometimes I deal with survival because there's so many other patients I meet that are no longer here, and yet I'm still here. But then I realized, okay, I'm here for a purpose. And so if you don't hear nothing I say today, please take control of your health. Let's not wait until something falls down for us to go to see what's going on. Let's go in and get a baseline now, because early detection is what's going to save us. Because we can't do the work we want to do if we're no longer here. And so that's why I'm so passionate. So I'm gonna be quiet because I get so fired up when I think about this, because I know so many people who take it for granted. But your health is your wealth.
That's powerful. And thank you for that. And congratulations on your success. There are two things that immediately come to mind listening to your comments. Number one, you know, in public health circles, when we talk about health prevention and promotion, it's kind of important for the audience to realize that, you know, we talk about three different types of prevention. Primary prevention is basically avoiding disease. You have the power to do that by taking control of your life, much in the ways that Mr. Hayes talked about. Be in the best shape of your life. Eat healthy. Introduce fruits and vegetables into your life. You know, there's nothing wrong with being a semi-vegetarian. That's chicken, fish, and turkey. I've probably eaten more beef and pork. Well, I know that I've eaten enough beef and pork that I'll never eat it again for the rest of my life. There's simple things that you can do to improve your health outcomes. That's primary prevention. Just avoid it to begin with. Secondary prevention is actually the things that help early identification of these things to give you the best possible chance for the best possible outcome. That's getting screened. That's having conversations with your primary care physician. And tertiary prevention is actually having the disease and doing what's necessary to forestall the advancement and spread of that disease. All of these things are within your hands. You have the power to engage in health prevention on all these levels. But we need help. We know that the social determinants of health, as many of our speakers have discussed, actually are real things that place roadblocks to access to care, impediments because of the cost of care, and sometimes limit us because of the quality of care. Some of us live in medical deserts where you can't get to a physician or get to a hospital. We appreciate that. And that's where LLS has really done a fantastic job in making available resources for our community. So we want to spend some time and actually talk about resources that are free and available to you, okay? Because this doesn't have to be a death sentence. You can have an excellent quality of life. You just have to be empowered. And part of being empowered at the beginning of the conversation means being knowledgeable about this. So let me just have Brother Jones jump back in, or any of the speakers actually, so that we can talk about the resources that are available so that we can keep people educated and to deal with the partners that can provide resources in identifying these diseases and in getting the resources and treatment that are available.
Well,
Brother
thank you,
Jones.
Dr. Sterling. I want to just say to both Dr. Sterling and Dr. Butler, thank you so much for being here. You are the subject matter experts. I am a community outreach leader with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and hearing Mr. Hayes tell his story was so impactful, because we all resonate with, if you've got a headache or something's wrong, you take a Tylenol and keep it pushing. And we don't go ask our doctors the second question. So I just commend the three of you for what you're doing today and giving us this platform where we can talk about LLS, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I want to talk about the mission really quickly. The mission of LLS is to cure all blood cancers. We're searching for a cure, and we want to, while we're doing that, improve the lives of patients and their families and their caregivers. And so we really do that through the resources that we provide, which are financial resources, educational resources, and emotional support. We talked a little bit about this earlier, and I'm hoping that Dr. Butler can touch on it later on, but we talked about the importance of clinical trials. Many times we have misperceptions about clinical trials where we think we're being a guinea pig, but LLS has what is called the Clinical Trial Support Center, where you can call our 800 number. It's 800-955-4572. I'm going to ask our technician to put that in the chat in just a moment. But you can call our Clinical Trial Support Center and just ask questions about a clinical trial that's right for you if you're a blood cancer patient. Or maybe you have questions about clinical trials, period. You can call that number and ask any questions. We have the Information Resource Center that operates from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 800-955-4572. You can call and ask questions about blood cancers, the specific types of blood cancers, treatments that are available, signs and symptoms. But what I want to point out now, and I'll stop talking in just a moment, is that the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity has lent itself to supporting the mission of LLS by helping us reach communities that are underserved. We've got a program called the Myeloma Link Initiative. The Myeloma Link Initiative actually connects underserved communities to the resources that LLS has. So many of the chapters in the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated have joined with us to attend our events or asking us to attend their events, their blood drives, their health fairs, so that we can give out these free resources and raise awareness. Thank you, Dr. Sterling, for giving me that opportunity to just share LLS's resources.
Well, I want to build on that and point out, sometimes these webinars are preaching to the choirs, but we do this, we preach to the choir because we want to hear an amen at the end of it.
Absolutely.
So let me just be very clear to the audience here. If I told you that cancer was the #1 cause of death, then that should mean that it's the #1 thing you should be worried about. So if I told you that we have resources available to you to help forestall that disease and to educate you and to provide you with treatment resources, might be a good idea to take advantage of it. To that end, Brother Jones actually mentioned the Myeloma Link program. We have initiatives that are going to be going up soon in Houston, Oakland, Cleveland, Detroit, and Birmingham, Alabama. If you are from a city that you believe would benefit from this pilot and from these series of lunch and learns and other conversations, let us know. We're here to serve. We're here to help. We're partnered with a great organization. And this is not about just giving this one conversation. We want to drill deep. We want to make an impact so that we have more individuals like Rashad Hayes that can tell stories with passion and with a smile and more life to live on the other side of this conversation. So let me just thank everybody for this fantastic conversation. We have done what we wanted to do. You guys are just awesome in providing awareness, information, and advice. I want to give the panel any opportunity to add any additional comments or thoughts before we close out. And let's just open it up and jump on in if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to come back around to a couple of things that was stated. One, I think Brother Jones was asking about clinical trials. So, that's something that has for a long time, due to a lot of the history of medicine with African Americans, has scared the African American population. Clinical trials are very important in 2024. As you heard earlier, we make up one out of every 5 patients diagnosed with myeloma is African American. Okay, that's about 20% of patients. That's a lot. We only make up 14% of this American population, but we make up 20% of all myeloma diagnoses. So therefore, the only way we can improve and understand how we can benefit as a race from the treatments is to participate in clinical trials. So these clinical trials are really important for us. That clinical trial support center number, if you're in an area that has, community resources, regional hospital system, academic centers, these are going to be available to you. Don't be afraid to participate with them. Another interesting statistic is if you can, we've learned, and especially blood cancers and solid tumors, if you can have a shared racial ethnic background with your provider, that's important as well. That oftentimes gives you that comfort level. I read an interesting study last week in preparation for this that actually showed that when there's a shared racial ethnic background, when I say that physician being Black because you're Black or Hispanic because you're Hispanic, those patients usually do better in terms of the trust, but also following and being compliant with the treatment paradigm. So therefore, if you can find that and you find someone you can trust, like a Dr. Sterling in your area or someone else, find that person that you can actually meet, talk to, and explain, I'm scared of cancer. I have multiple myeloma in my family. Should I be screened? I have some of these non-specific complaints that you heard from our patient today, our panelists today. Should I look into them? That's going to be very important. I'm looking quickly at the chat also, and I just want to make sure there's no confusion. There was a question about the type of cancer that we heard about. And lymphoma, as you heard, this is LLS, Lymphoma Leukemia Society. Lymphoma is a type of tumor that's in the blood and in the lymph nodes. Myeloma is more of just the blood cells. But they both are treated very similarly, and they actually are in a group of cancers that we call blood cancers. So therefore, they all are somewhat a little bit different. But again, depending on what you're diagnosed with, we customize the treatment, we customize the discussion, and hopefully that patient will do well depending on what they're being treated for. So very, very important that you be proactive, very important that you find someone that you can trust, and very important that you do not, as you heard, move away from treatment, but move towards it and try to figure out a way that actually you can actually get rid of it or actually have it in a remission and to be able to live a good quality of life with that tumor, that cancer, that blood cancer.
Guys, and I'm talking to the audience. This is meant to be the first step, not the last step. You have resources available to you. Believe me, LLS is just a phenomenal organization. You would do very well to just have a conversation. It's much better than watching reruns of whatever your least favorite sitcom is, just to have a conversation with someone that can tell you about the risk to your life. As always, these Surgeon General Initiative conversations and other webinars that we put on are all about empowerment. We want you to be the stewards of your own health. We want you to know where your resources are to do better to improve the quality and the quantity of your life. I want to thank Alpha Phi Alpha and LLS and the panelists for this discussion. I hope you found it impactful. We are available to you. You can reach me at surgeongeneral@apa1906.net. if you have any direct questions. Otherwise, I will return you to your day. Thank you so much. God bless. Be well, be healthy. Take care.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sterling.
Thank you, Dr. Sterling.
Thanks, everyone.